Greetings and welcome to the Transform Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio. Today is Friday, July 21st, 2023, and this is episode 113 of our podcast, and just the third, I believe, in the video series that we essentially started just a couple episodes back. So welcome back, guys. Haven't posted since, I think it was like late June. We put up an episode about going live on Facebook, why you could potentially see more reach out of going live on Facebook, why that would be a beneficial experiment at a minimum for you to run, if not something you should incorporate into your rhythm of going live on there and taking advantage of the superior reach that we're seeing through that specific medium within Facebook. So check that episode out if you guys get a chance. That was from June 27th. But what I wanted to talk to you guys about briefly today also kind of continues along the meta theme, but now focuses on Threads, the new platform that they put up as a Twitter competitor, if you will, or Twitter knockoff, as cynics might say, just a few weeks back. I believe it was at the beginning of this month that it really kind of hit the street and started making some waves and so forth. And so I just wanted to pose a couple things to you guys about this, and a lot of this is inspired by my personal virtual mentor, Gary Vaynerchuk. And that is, the first thing I want to say is, to echo Gary's thoughts about this, is a lot of people are saying this is going to kill Twitter, this is going to end Twitter, this is better than Twitter, this is Mark Zuckerberg finishing off Elon Musk, et cetera, et cetera. And I disagree with all of that. And I disagree with it essentially for the reason that Gary talks about, which is, this is a world where you have, and this is a direct quotation almost from Gary, this is a world where you have to look at things as and versus or. I fully subscribe to that. I fully believe in that. We have espoused that general philosophy here at Transform in terms of, for example, omni-channel advertising versus picking one platform and sticking with it. In other words, and philosophy versus or philosophy. You want to be on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, that kind of thing. So Gary really sort of punches that home when he talks about this narrative that Threads kills off Twitter or vice versa. It's some sort of competition or whatever. I think Twitter has its place. Threads will more than likely find its place. I mean, it's very fledgling, it's very new, but its user count explosion is impossible to ignore. So I really doubt it's going anywhere, or it's going to go away. But I think that you have to look at it, guys, like, okay, there are certain things I'm going to accomplish on each of these platforms. They're fairly similar, but there are some nuances. There are some differences. There are some differences in what kind of material can be posted other than text, length of videos. You can post longer videos on Twitter if you have the Twitter Blue subscription, or longer videos can be posted on Threads if you don't have the Twitter Blue subscription, things like that. Like hashtags really aren't, I don't think they're any kind of importance whatsoever yet on Threads. That might change over time, but hashtags are important on Twitter. So there's different nuances at minimum. There's some major differences, I think you could argue, but certainly there are nuances that are different between the two platforms. And so if you're sitting on this, the other end of this podcast, and you're saying, hey, Chris, I have built a Twitter following. I have a substantial presence on Twitter, and I can't just discard it. I'm not going to just dump it. You don't have to. The good news is you don't have to do that. You can test out Threads, and you can establish a presence on Threads without losing anything you've gained or built on Twitter. I do not believe this is going to be a zero-sum game, and I don't look at it as some kind of competition to the death or anything like that. So that's kind of the first point that I think Gary makes that's very worth echoing. The other point is less about the technical platforms. It's almost the same point, but it's not about the technical platforms. It's about what goes on up here when we as marketers, whether you're the business owner also acting as the marketer, or you're the marketer for the business, you're an employee, or whether you're an outside consultant hired for the business, whatever role you're playing in that marketing mindset or psychology, we have to adopt this approach of trying things, experimenting with things, and using the word and versus or sort of at the individual level. Okay, so I first talked about the technical kind of comparison between the two platforms. Now I'm talking about you as an individual saying, well, I'm already on too many platforms. I don't need another one. I don't need to go on Threads. I've got a good presence on YouTube and TikTok. So what do I need Threads for? One thing we've seen, if nothing else, in the social media landscape is that things change. Platforms come and go. Platforms rise and fall. Platforms run into existential issues. I mean, look at the potential ban on TikTok. Okay, that's a perfect example of that. So being in as many places as you can afford to be, and when I say afford, I mostly mean time-wise, not money-wise. Being on as many platforms as you can afford to be, being as engaged as you can afford to be across all those platforms, and taking the best of what those platforms have to offer, as each one has its nuances as to what kind of strategies work best or tactics work best on that platform. The more of that you can do, the more habitual you can make that, the more reflexive you can make that, the better. And so, bottom line, guys, the bottom line, guys, is you have to look at this as an and game, A-N-D, not an or game, O-R, okay? And I think that goes both technically and individually. And individually, certainly there are ways you can hack this to save some of that time so that it's not necessarily creating, an outsized burden to now learn a new platform, post on another platform. I mean, in many ways, the content that you would use on a very similar platform, let's take Twitter, can be repurposed on Threads. I mean, if you're typing out, a couple 100-character tweet, cut and paste that text over to Threads. Now, think about how it sounds, think about how it comes off. Maybe there's some tweaks that you have to do to that text, but it can largely be reused. The important point is that you're there, you're present on that platform, okay, even though you may have cut and pasted the words from Twitter over to Threads. When you're talking about multimedia use, pay attention to what multimedia fits on one and maybe doesn't fit on the other. If you have, let's say, a Twitter Blue subscription and you can post 10-minute videos on Twitter, well, take a look and say, okay, well, let me take that 10-minute video and cut it into two pieces and have a part one and a part two and do those two posts on Threads. So now you have, hey, this is a part one, check out this first video. Then my second one is following behind it, and then you post the second half, okay? So I think, that would be a slight little difference between how you might post on Twitter and how you might post on Threads, but it's the same piece of content. You didn't have to shoot a new video. You didn't have to completely come up with a new caption. You pretty much used like 98% of what you first did and just kind of tweaked it a little bit or reconfigured it for Threads. So again, it doesn't have to be an onerous or outsized burden, okay? So anyway, this is where I want to kind of leave it with you guys. I want to keep this episode under 10 minutes, but think about, if you're already on Threads, great. I think that's great that you're there. Stay there, play with it, experiment with it, see how it's going, see what you can do with it, that sort of thing. If you're not on Threads yet, you're on the fence, or you think you've made up your mind not to go there, consider what we're saying today in this podcast. Consider the idea that you want to be in an and mindset, not an or mindset. Thank you, Gary Vee. And give it a try. Give it a shot. Open an account. Post for 60, 90, 120 days. Repurpose content. Then fill in the other 2 to 5% and see what happens. And you may very well find that you have more traction and more reach and more benefit from being on Threads than maybe where you were previously focusing. But if nothing else, you would have added another channel and another whole dimension to your audience by doing so. Okay, guys? So hope everybody had a great week. Hope everybody's having a great summer so far. Cannot believe that we're almost into the last full month of summer, that being August. We'll definitely try to get another episode up for next week for you guys. That would be episode 114. But for now, hope you guys enjoyed episode 113 on Meta Threads. And drop us a comment, drop us your feedback on how it's going on Threads, how you're using it, what you're seeing on there. We'd love to hear from you. Of course, if you want to find us online, look up Pransform, Pransform, on Facebook and LinkedIn. And of course, follow us here on the podcast and check out the website at pransform.com. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye-bye.